This is Nice Work. I'm Alex Chambers. I don't know how many teenagers were watching Charlie Rose in the 90s, but I was one of those three. If you're not familiar, Charlie Rose had an interview show that ran on PBS from 1991 to 2017. Like Terry Gross on public radio, who I also listened to semi-religiously, Rose interviewed all kinds of famous people: directors, comedians, politicians, writers. The interviews were filmed around a small table. No frills, just really interesting conversations with creative people whose ranks I wanted to join. But even more than that, I dreamed of getting to do what Charlie Rose and Terry Gross did: conduct the conversations, ask the questions that would get the most interesting reflections on how people approached their work, hear answers that would help us understand what really motivated the work, and then appreciate it on another level. Somehow, decades later, I managed to get a job doing that very thing. I also started teaching classes in podcasting, where I got to think with students about what makes a good interview. Around that same time, a more famous interviewer than me decided to call up a bunch of other interviewers, including Terry Gross, and interviewed them about interviewing. His name is Jesse Thorn, and the podcast that came out of it is The Turnaround. If you're interested in what makes an interview work, I highly recommend it. In the fall of 2025, WFIU started airing Jesse Thorn's flagship show, Bullseye, and I had the chance to talk with him about what he's learned from doing interviews for over 25 years and from talking with other great interviewers like Audie Cornish, who was, at the time, a host of All Things Considered, and Mark Maron, Ira Glass, and Larry King. So, here we go. My interview about interviewing with Jesse Thorn. I'll preface this by saying I loved The Turnaround.
Oh, thank you.
Just really enjoyed it. I've assigned the Anna Sale conversation multiple times to my students. I've heard it now like many times. Her baby, the sound of her baby on the mic is very familiar to my ears. Probably more than yours.
I'm grateful to hear that you haven't just come to resent me because I did something wrong when I was talking to Audie Cornish.
That's one thing about NPR News. Like, NPR News never fails to do a good job.
I love how you say that so dismissively.
No, but I mean, that's a really special thing.
I mean,
that
they do a good
consistency of
job at
execution.
the news. Like, what? It's the news. I think sometimes people, I never watch 60 Minutes or, some news show in the evening and go, oh, I really wish this was more like Saturday Night Live. Like, they're not the same thing. You don't bite into an apple and ask why it doesn't, taste like a banana. And I think you're listening to it and your wife is listening to it because, you want to be informed and then you want to go about your day. Is that, a bad bar to set for people to, make sure they're informed?
No, I'm not against any of this.
Do you also need to know about the baseball loving as well?
I don't know
That
exactly
was
what I did, but
I was going to comment on that one, too. There were some moments there.
Yeah. My favorite one,
Okay.
Alex, Larry King.
Larry King.
Larry King.
The less I know, the better. Now, that sounds strange to people. Like, if you wrote a book, I wouldn't read the book before I interviewed you because I would then know too much about the book. And I'm in the same boat as the audience. They haven't read the book. So we're all in this together.
That's the one that, changed my life.
Did it really? Was it
He was a ridiculous man. I mean, I say that with immense affection.
How did it change your life? Was it how much he flies by the seat of his pants kind of thing?
It was so, the idea of the turnaround, right, was that I never went to J school.
Right.
I never had a mentor even.
Right.
I worked a little bit on a show called West Coast Live that had a wonderful host named Sedge Thompson, who was very nice to me. But he also would just appear 30 seconds before the show was supposed to start and then disappear immediately afterwards. So I barely know him. But for those reasons, my idea was I could just ask people if are my completely autodidactic techniques appropriate, But the thing that surprised me about what I actually learned about it was, because I was not making any money from the show and had no plan to make any money from the show and have 75 other jobs, I decided that outside of booking the show, I would not prepare for the interviews, which normally I prepare, but I was I can't spend a day prepping for every one of these interviews. It just doesn't make sense. So the most that I prepped for one of those interviews was, maybe for someone whose work I genuinely was unfamiliar with, Like, I don't watch morning news, so I knew Katie Couric by reputation mostly, but like wanted to see some of her interviews, you know. But in general, I was like, I got to draw a line and only watch and only prep the barest minimum, because otherwise my life will be out of control. And what I learned from that was how essential being present and responding in the moment was in that conversation. And the fact that ignorance can be an ally, or at least awareness of one's ignorance. And no one was more aware of their ignorance than Larry King. So like Larry King, like I went to his house, me and one of our producers went to his house. We like got welcomed by his Hollywood assistant into his giant ante room with a grand piano in it. And then we went into his den that was like the walls were lined with trophies and pictures of him with presidents and baseball Hall of Famers. Like where like the coffee table was piled high with trophies. Like you couldn't put anything anywhere because there was too many trophies. And then he came in and, you know, he was like 80 something.
Yeah.
But he was also bragging about the human growth hormone that he was on. And immediately was like locked eyes with me and was 10,000% there with me.
Wow.
Like sometimes Larry King was a celebrity in addition to being a journalist. And like sometimes a celebrity like that, they are practiced at being pleasant and are probably pleasant people, but like the requirements of celebrity are such that sometimes they just have to be in a defensive mode, like a mode where they are enacting their pleasantness. I would say an example of that from someone who I believe to be almost certainly a genuinely super pleasant human being is Tom Hanks. Like I interviewed Tom Hanks once and I was interviewing a movie star and it felt like I was interviewing a movie star the whole time. He could not have been more pleasant. It was a lot of work to surprise him with anything.
Right.
And, you know, break through his shell. Not because he was being a jerk or something. It was just, you know, he gets interviewed all day, every day, you know.
Yeah.
Larry King, the opposite, right there with me. Hi, Jesse. So nice to meet you. Blah, 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 you know? And the thing that he said to me that really made an impact on me was essentially an argument for the fact that not knowing what the answer is what you want. Like, to some extent, I started doing my show live. I did my show live for a long time. And so I was always like interviewing to time. And and even after I stopped doing it live, I was still interviewing to time just because I didn't have any money to hire an editor. And I had a full-time job, so I could only do so much editing myself. But like when you're live on the air and you're interviewing to time, you kind of have to know what you're going to get when you ask a question so that you can plan out that block of time and make sure that nothing goes wrong. And so you really have to calculate your risks. But the argument that Larry King made to me essentially is that if you're not actually wondering what the answer is, what's the point of asking the question? And if you're wondering what the answer is, probably your audience is wondering what the answer is. And the example that I will never let out of my mind that blew my mind was him as saying the best question he ever asked or something along those lines was he asking an airplane pilot when he took off if he knew he was going to land. And you're like, this is a question that makes Larry King sound dumb. But Larry King does not care because it is an interesting question that we all want to know the answer to.
We do.
And you don't have to sound dumb to do that. I mean, like when I listen to Terry Gross interview people, I'm struck by the same thing, which is, you know, there are topics on Fresh Air about which I know 10,000 times more than Terry Gross does, even though Terry Gross is the most prepared human being on earth, right? Like when Terry Gross talks to Questlove, I spent my formative years on Questlove's internet message board. You know, like I know everything about the Roots and the Soulquarians, and, you know, I could tell you more about Bilal than she knows about rap music, you know? But she is not afraid of her own ignorance. And she does not pretend to know things that she does not know. And so she prepares in order to find out what she wonders about, but she is not afraid to wonder about things. And I know for me, as like an over-preparer and as a person who is afraid to look dumb, that was a lesson that I had to learn actively. And so that was a lesson that was taught to me by, the man on television who is least afraid to look dumb, or was least afraid to look dumb since we lost him. But like, it's not like I'm like, I'm going to go back and watch old episodes of Larry King Live. But the stuff that he learned doing 6-hour overnight shifts in a diner where he just interviewed whoever wandered up to him.
Amazing.
Is really, really valuable. And it reinforced for me the sort of corollary lesson that I learned doing that show, which was tying one hand behind my back, preparation-wise, meant that I had to be really engaged with whoever was sitting in front of me. And I had to not be afraid to look dumb. I mean, the people that email me that are mad at me because I looked dumb when I talked to Audie Cornish, a super genius, I am like, yeah, well, that's what the point of the show was. That's what the show was about, me looking dumb. I am dumb. I never went to journalism school. I've never worked in a newsroom.
Right.
I don't know anything about reporting the news.
I know. Yeah. I can certainly relate to that. I did a PhD and then got hired to teach this podcasting class to students who had to take journalism classes to take the podcasting class. And I was like, I've never taken this journalism classes. You guys know more than I do.
The closest I ever came to going to journalism school was I couldn't get a job out of college. I graduated from college and just could not get a job. And I'm talking about any kind of job. Like I was applying for radio jobs, but like I was applying for, barista jobs and not getting them. And it got really desperate. I mean, I was like living at my mom's house, but I did not have, and I would like get the occasional like, I need somebody to babysit kind of job that paid for my food, but I was penniless. And in that experience, I was like, okay, I give up. My dad is a disabled veteran, so I get free tuition in school. So I'm going to go to graduate school. And like, because I know I could get like, it was like $600 a month in vets benefits if I went to graduate school. I'm just going to go to graduate school. So I signed up for broadcasting school at San Francisco State because I lived in San Francisco. And I was in graduate school for like 3 weeks because I like went to the orientation and was like getting ready to sign up for classes. And I had to go meet an advisor to sign up for class. I went to the advisor. And the advisor was like, okay, so you're going to need to take all these journalism and broadcasting prereqs in order to get this graduate degree. And I was like, well, I have an award-winning radio show. Does that count? And they were like, nope. And I was like, okay, I can't take a year and a half of broadcasting classes in order to start my master's degree. So that's as close as I've ever gotten to taking a class in broadcasting.
Wow. Yeah, that's great until the turnaround, I guess, which was...
Exactly.
What's changed for you as an interviewer since the beginning of The Sound of Young America? 25 years.
I mean, 25 years ago, I was terrified to fill time. Uh-huh. That was the scariest part of the show. I was there with my friends Jordan and Gene, who co-hosted the show with me for the first 4 or 5 years. And they were the funniest guys I knew. But even with the three of us in a room, and even, we were doing improv on stage at the time, but even given all of that, the prospect of filling the time ourselves was terrifying. And so interviews were a way to fill the time, A. Oh. And then B, it was this constant desperation of, as soon as this guest stops talking, I'm going to have to say something. Because we're on the air live, And so it was a real trial by fire in that sense. And we would be in the studio. The guest would almost always be on the phone because we were in Santa Cruz and nobody was ever in Santa Cruz. And so we would be in the studio, the three of us sitting around the broadcast console. And just every once in a while a guest was talking, one of us would like raise our hand and it was like, phew, oh, he's got something to ask. So that terror is one of the big things, I think, and the absence of that terror, right?
Like that's
at some
away.
point, this would be maybe 10 years ago or 12 years ago. I was in therapy, my old therapist, Dr. Carr, shout out to Dr. Carr. And I was describing to him all this anxiety I would feel before an interview for Bullseye. And he would say, well, what are you anxious about? And I'm like, well, I admire these people and their work, and there's a lot of people listening, and I feel like, what if I make a fool of myself, and what if I do a bad job? All these things, right? Just normal, what if I do a bad job type stuff. And then he was one of these therapists that only ask you questions instead of telling you stuff. And you're like, you can just tell me stuff, but it's fine. So he asked me the question. He's like, so you're afraid of it going badly? And I was like, yes. And he says, well, does it ever go badly? And I was like, no, I guess not. And so that really left me feeling, I still have to convince myself of it, to be clear, but it left me in a way unlocked. It gave me the feeling, it's okay. You've done this a lot. If something goes horribly wrong, you can edit it out. And these people are there because they want to be there. I haven't had to browbeat anyone into coming, it's not like where people are beating down our doors, but everyone has agreed to be there, Nobody's getting a burlap sack lifted off of their head. And then they're like, oh, great. Now I have to do an NPR interview. Okay. They're pulled out of an unmarked van. So
the worst experience ever.
Exactly. So that, convincing myself of that was a big relief for me, and in some ways gave me permission, or I gave myself permission to see what happens. And
like in that Larry King sort of way too.
Exactly. And to be less controlling, more open-hearted, more curious, and just know that if I approach people with a sincere sense of curiosity and wonder, they will generally respond in kind. They will match that.
Do you think the interviews themselves got better, or were you just more able to enjoy them?
I absolutely think the interviews got better. I think that the centrality of actually caring what the person has to say, actually paying attention, actually being curious about it, can't be overstated. And those are things that you can get into when you are open-hearted in that conversation. And there are things that are difficult to access if you think your job is to control that conversation. And, sometimes you got to hit the post or whatever.
Sure.
The intro of Don't Fear the Reaper has started, and when the vocals start, and you got to say, sometimes you got to give traffic on the twos. But still, that feeling of actually meeting someone's gaze, giving a care what they have to say, being genuinely curious about it, noting your own curiosities and expressing them, and not feeling like you have to seem smart and clever is really essential to getting something out of somebody that's worth listening to. And if you actually give a care, people can tell.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
If you care what they have to say, people can tell. People want to talk about the things that they care about.
Yeah.
And if they work on something all the time, they care about it.
Right.
Even if it's just because it makes them mad. Even if they work at Wendy's and they hate Dave Thomas, it is important to them.
That's a good point.
One of the things that I learned from the This American Life comic book, which I really recommend to your students.
Oh, yeah.
It costs we've $5.
It's great.
That was my only textbook that I've ever had. That came out when I was in college. But one of the things is people are always most interesting when they're talking about the things they're most interested in. So if you can ask somebody about the things they're most interested in, and you can ask them from a perspective of a person who's not familiar with those things, and you are a proxy for your audience, well, you're going to get great stuff.
Exactly.
You can ask a scientist whether they've ever blown anything up. They'll tell you. That's probably a good answer either way.
Either way, yeah.
Ask Jane Goodall if chimpanzees are embarrassed when they poop. Right? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Either way.
We got to know.
Yeah. I think there are forms of interview that are less about the person and more about exposition.
Right.
If I'm interviewing a scientist about a thing they discovered, part of my job is to provide the structure for them to express that thing that they discovered, for news purposes.
Right.
My interviews are generally about human beings who are doing something creative. And there is not that scientists aren't human beings, but the creative act is about who you are in your heart, So it's essential for me to like be there. But the honest truth is that at the end of the day, the best question might be, have you ever made anything explode? You know, like we all want to know if scientists are out there exploding stuff.
I've been, interviewing for a little while now, and I've got a co-host who hasn't been doing it for as long. And he was listening to some of my interviews and like, you really managed to get like life out of people and really engage well and all that. Like you get laughter. And I was like, I think there's an element of, at least the way I sometimes approach it, of wanting to charm people. Like there's a flirtation to it almost. And I don't know if everyone approaches it that way. And so I'm sort of curious to just hear your thoughts on that.
One of the experiences that I think was most central to my growth on air was that, I did The Sound of Young America, which was the earlier form of Bullseye, for 5 years on college radio. But then I had moved home to San Francisco from Santa Cruz, where I went to college. So, a couple hours away. And I moved from my college radio station to the now defunct KUSP in Santa Cruz, which was an NPR station. And the big difference in my life there was that KUSP had a board operator. And so I could just send them my show. I didn't have to be there in case the emergency alert system went off. And that meant that I didn't have to drive back and forth to Santa Cruz. And so I sold my car and I bought a telephone hybrid, the machine that connects a mixing board to a telephone line, and a microphone, very possibly. I mean, they all look exactly the same, but it's very possible that the one I'm talking into right now is the one that I bought because I still have it. We got like 6 of them now, but one of them is the one that I bought 20 some years ago. And I bought like a mic arm and started making the show in my apartment. And when I moved to Los Angeles a few years later, I started often doing the interviews in person in my apartment because I didn't have a staff of any kind. I mean, I was on a fair number of stations at that point with Public Radio International, but I had no staff or anything. And I couldn't afford studios elsewhere to put people in to connect to them. So they just had to come to my apartment in Koreatown. And it was a 1-bedroom apartment. So like part of the experience of talking to people was going down to the front door of my apartment building, shaking hands with them, bringing them upstairs, offering them something to drink, sitting them down. And it is a different thing to be a guest in someone's home than it is to be on the other side of a telephone line doing a satellite tour, right?
Yeah.
And eventually my wife had a baby and we had this intern who kept running into things and going, ow, and waking up the baby. And so my wife was like, you have to get an office, Jesse. And I was scared that I would lose that. I was scared that I would lose the feeling of people, meeting my dog. But what I found was that I could, to some extent, create that feeling through the tone with which I welcome people onto my show. Even if they were in a studio 3,000 miles away, which they are sometimes. So I do view my guests as guests and want to have a human relationship with them. The other piece of it is having met, we just did 25 interviews in a row last night.
Oh my God.
For our 25th anniversary. And everybody was somebody I booked by emailing them simply because of the logistics of booking 25 people. We were like, only people that Jesse has their email address are we going to even try and book, no publicists. And so most of the people were people that I know in real life, many of them that I met through my work. And like sitting with those people, Bob Odenkirk or Rob Hubel or Lisa Loeb or whoever it is, I was like, oh, these are people that I talk to like they were people. These are people whose work I admired more than anything. You know what I mean? And the fact that Bob Odenkirk, Mr. Show changed my life. And I learned by talking to hundreds of people like that they are all just people.
Yeah. Right.
Like they may be particularly talented, but there's no like special thing about a talented person that makes them a non-person. And there are like, if you get really famous, there are like burdens that come with that really stink, that you have to deal with, and you might deal with them by building certain defenses or whatever. But even Tom Cruise is a human being, And so there is like a respect that goes with talking to someone and realizing that they're not like a tool for you or an abstract idea, but actually just like a person. So that is something that I do try and keep in mind. And I think like to some extent at this point, innately keep in mind, which is when I'm talking to somebody, that's somebody, that's like that could be my uncle or my nephew or, my sister,
Right. It's not like Tom Hanks in quotation marks with capital letters. It's
exactly. And like, I've almost never had like a negative interaction with somebody on the air, but like if somebody is guarded in the way that Tom Hanks was, or if somebody is just guarded in their life. I mean, John Cena, I interviewed not that long ago. And like John Cena is a obsessive, compulsive worker. You don't get to be a giant muscle man unless you're fat. And like a really brilliant, fascinating man, but like a real weirdo, because only a real weirdo would become a muscle man and like go into a career where you just get beaten senseless every night and just have to like tie yourself back together with twine.
Right.
And go out the next night. Right. And there was a moment in that conversation where he was describing that he was like the weird hip hop kid when he was in middle school and high school in his like mostly white school in the late 80s, early 90s. And he was describing his like outfits that he would wear and get picked on. And I was like, well, tell me about them, right? Like, I want to hear about these outfits.
Yeah.
Specifics are the soul of narrative. And he started describing them. And I was like, what? Like Kwame the Boy Wonder, who was a rapper producer who was famous for wearing polka dots. And he goes, I loved Kwame the Boy Wonder. And I was like, this is a guy who was like paying attention to me and everything. Like it's not like he was shining me on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he's a guarded guy. He lives this like ascetic lifestyle where he teaches himself songs on the piano every time he's in a movie and all his free time from the movie. And I was like, well, here's a funny thing. Kwame the Boy Wonder, He's got a great name.
That's for sure.
He's actually a very talented guy, like made great music, but like famous for wearing polka dots, right? And if you notice things like that, even a guarded person, I like asked Tom Hanks what makes him mad. Because I was like, he's so nice all the goddamn time. You got
to know. We need that answer.
It was a traffic thing. It was like people honking at him for I can't remember. It was something about traffic.
Okay.
I was like, even this
that
is
one. I know.
Yeah, you're being cute, Tom Hanks. I get it. You're Tom Hanks.
Playing Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
That's my interview with Jesse Thorn. We like to thank people for coming on our show, and I did, in fact, thank Jesse. Thank you, Jesse. Really appreciate it. And then I thanked him again. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And one more time. Okay. Thanks a lot, Jesse. Appreciate it. Bye. But Jesse had already stopped recording on his end, so we'll just have to trust that he had an okay time. Bullseye airs on Saturday evenings at 7 on WFIU 2. That's 101.9 in Bloomington and 100.1 in Seymour. It's also a podcast, and you can find it in all the same places you listen to Nice Work. Thanks for listening. I'm Alex Chambers, and this is Nice Work.